but can I just check that everyone can see, because I feel like the chairs are everywhere. There's maybe some space down the side here if anybody wants to move, or if everyone's okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask Nancy to start us off. Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Nancy. I'm the events manager here at S2, where you are. I recognise some of you. Willa and Rob told me that this is the 8th time that we've hosted. The 9th time that we've hosted you guys. So you're old hat now. You're helping yourself to the fridge. It's really nice to have you here. A couple of things. Toilets are just there. Grey door. It used to be painted blue, so I always go blue door up. No. So the grey door there. The guest and Wi-Fi password is just behind you on that white pillar. It also pops up occasionally on that TV over there. There's no fire drill planned, so if a loud, high-pitched alarm sounds and I look really, really panicked, then just leave and probably don't come back. We'll just call this one quits. We are, for us two, we're a digital product studio. We actually take up half of 3 floors of this building. We make digital products for leading companies, and we make our own stuff as well. We've created something recently called Mood Notes, which is a cognitive behavioural therapy app, and we also birthed the team who created Monument Valley, which was won the Apple Design Award a few years ago. We're actually looking for illustrators to join our roster of people who do illustrations for our blogs. If you'd like to get on, it's not a full-time position, it's contractual work, as it often is with you guys, I understand. So if you are interested in joining that list, then email events@us2, address it to Nancy, and we can give you a little bit of information. There might not be something coming out of it immediately, but we're definitely looking to build up a bank of people and then use them in the future. Does that sound good?
We can post that up on Twitter as well.
Yeah, that's hot off the press to you guys. So yeah, I think that's great. I'll be at the back there. If you know of any groups illustration groups that meet, or people who would like to use this space, we'd like to use it as a digital community space. So please let me know and have a good evening. Thanks everyone.
I've written it all down because I forget, even when I say almost the exact same thing every time. Okay, so as Nancy said, this is our 9th talk, which actually means this is the start of our 3rd year doing this, which is kind of crazy. I know. We've got our first ever speakers here as well, so it's all about time. Thank you so much for coming. Again, tickets sell out really quickly for these things. I know it's not easy to get a hold of one. It just is a sign of the appetite for these kind of events. My name's Willa Gebbie.
I'm Rob Barrett.
And we've been running Illo. Well, Rob started it 6 years ago?
Yeah, so January 2011 it started.
Yeah, so I've totally gone on. Okay, so yes, so everyone else in the audience, these are ultimately your colleagues, your illustration colleagues, your graphic design colleagues. Use this as an opportunity to get to know each other, mingle, chat. It's all very friendly. Also, we're going to go into the pub afterwards. So it's the Owl and Pussycat, which is go out the door, turn right. It's the regular one we go to if anyone's not being in. We'll tell you about it afterwards. Also, our speakers are both coming for a drink afterwards. So if you've got any questions that you don't have a chance to ask, that's your chance to go and harass them.
Cool. So before we kick off, we have to say a few thanks. So we couldn't do this without some help with a few people. Us two, as Nancy just said, let us use this space. They give it to us for free, which is how we're able to put this on for free. If you don't know them, they're a digital design. How do you describe it, Nance?
Digital product studio.
Thank you. Digital product studio. So yeah, you might have seen the free boards. Monument Valley is probably the most well-known thing that they've done. Sort of guys from it. And Nancy gives her time for free to do this. So this is her spare time. We couldn't run this without her. So please,
thank you,
Nancy. And also free agent. So Free Agent are our sponsor. They are paying for the beer tonight. They're paying for the pizza if you manage to get a slice. If you don't know Free Agent, they're an online bookkeeping and accounting software. They're super easy. They're kind of aimed at small businesses and freelancers. I use it myself. Willa uses it herself. Says every time that if they weren't sponsoring us, we'd still be plugging them. If you go on the website, it's showing. Oh, there you go. Good timing. This will get you a free 3-month trial. So it's obviously new tax year. Give it a try. It really does save a hell of a lot of time doing all of that stuff.
So on to tonight. Our theme for tonight is lettering. And both of our speakers tonight, their portfolios sit on the edge of illustration and type design, I guess is. I want to be careful with typography and lettering and purists go a bit mental with that. So we've invited them along to talk about the portfolios, how they develop their style, and also the differences between approaching a lettering brief as opposed to an illustration brief. We have Kate Forrester and Ben Tallon. So tonight we'll have Kate on first. She'll talk for half an hour, I think it is, and then there'll be 10 minutes Q&A afterwards. Then there'll be a 10-minute break, and then Ben will be on after that. So there's plenty of time. Have a think of any questions you want to ask, and if you don't have time, as I said, we'll get up afterwards.
Yeah. So first up, we've got Kate. So Kate is a freelance illustrator. She specialises in hand-drawn lettering and illustrated packaging, publishing, and advertising. Since she graduated in Brighton in 2005, good. She's worked for an extensive range of international clients, so she's turned her hand to all kinds of things. There's like book covers, cocktail bottles, digital billboards, crockery, loads more. You're going to see a lot more of that from Kate in just a second, so please join us and welcome Kate to the stage. This is your first time. We've done this 9 times now. I still need it.
There we go. Yeah, that's fine.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me here at Illo. I'm very honoured to be here. So this I've not done much of this sort of thing, so bear with me.
Kate, just bring it. Keep it.
It's not broken.
Yeah. It's very sensitive.
You can tell I haven't done much of this sort of thing. And I'm also really excited to hear Ben's perspective on the subject of hand lettering, because I really admire his work and his approach and style of hand lettering is so different to mine. So anyway, I would describe myself as an illustrator who specialises in hand lettering. And today I'm going to talk to you just about my experience in the field. So, I thought actually it's funny that you said that, Willa, about getting the description wrong, talking about type design, because I thought I would start by clarifying that, because loads of people get it wrong. Art directors get it wrong all the time and ask me to do things that I'm not really qualified to do. Hand lettering, I would describe as drawing letters. So it's basically, for example, something like this, or I think so this is an editorial client, newspaper, who asked me just to hand letter the title of an article. So all those letters are just hand drawn, and then I scan them in, and there's illustrations as well. Most of my work is like this, but there is also calligraphy, which I do some of, and I think it's becoming more mainstream and more popular calligraphy. There seems to be a lot of amazing, really skilled calligraphers out there. And that is the art of writing rather than drawing letters. So it's learning to write in a really beautiful and consistent, practiced hand. And I do a little bit of calligraphy. If I get asked to do something, like a large block of text, where to hand letter it all would just be too time consuming and therefore too expensive for the client, something like this is more calligraphy. So that's done with a brush pen and that's written, not drawn. And the budget was small, and this was for a supermarket for their Jewish holiday campaign, and that is a piece of calligraphy where I just decided to do it all handwritten. And then the other thing is type design, which I actually don't do, which is the creation of a font, and everybody knows what a font is. But this is a much more technical skill. I don't know if anyone else has done type design or designed a font before, but it involves designing an entire alphabet and all of the letters and numbers and punctuation marks, and then technically formatting it so anyone can use it for design purposes. So often I get asked by an art director, for example, they'll say, hang on, oh, could you send us the font of that word so that we can use it for something? The font doesn't exist. I just designed it specifically for that purpose, for this particular brief. Okay, so the reason why I find hand lettering endlessly fascinating, and it's become central to my work, is just all the diverse opportunities that it's opened up to me. So everybody knows that in illustration, the key to a kind of successful career is to develop a style which is really distinct and really yours and really recognisable, so that art directors can come to you, a designer can come to you, and they know what they're going to get, which is fantastic. But the nice thing about lettering is I feel like it lets you explore lots of different concepts within your own range. So you can stay true to your kind of signature style and stay recognisable, but the diversity of briefs that come your way is huge. So I thought I'd show you a few examples of that. Oh wait, that's my game. Okay, so this is an example of a book cover that I did. And so the brief was, we want the title hand-lettered, we want the whole thing hand-lettered, but we want you to research this. They had a really strong idea of the style they wanted for the whole book, and they wanted me to look at an Argentinian sign painting tradition called fileteado. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that before, but it's just really, really fascinating, and it's really popular in Buenos Aires, and it's a very traditional way of making these really ornate street signs and signs on vehicles and all sorts, and they have very interesting, really sort of ornate lettering and all the fancy flourishes and all of that. So that, for me, was a treat to research. And then, that's some of the, so I did interior illustrations for that, and all of the opening pages and end papers. It was really heavy on sort of ornate illustrations, so it was a really nice project and really different to anything else I'd ever done. So this is a beer bottle label for which I was asked to look at. So it was a sort of trendy Scandinavian microbrewery called Cap, and they wanted this label to be inspired by sort of Belle Epoque artwork, and the lettering to be looking at the sort of Art Nouveau flourishes and the styles, as well as having a nod to Scandinavian folk, the sort of outfits that she wore and the frilly shirt and everything. And this is a cover of a book which is set in India, and they wanted for that me to look at, I don't know if anyone's ever seen the beautiful lorries that they have in India, where the trucks, they're all hand painted, lovely typography and really, really bright colours. So that was inspired by that. And lastly, this was a poster for another supermarket where they were celebrating a Cinco de Mayo, which is a Mexican holiday. So they wanted the typography and the illustration to look like one of the long, that's just a zoomed in one, so it was this long image to look like one of the Mexican paper cut posters and banners that they have. So that's just a little sample of the kind of work that I do. So it's quite different in style, but you can still recognise it as being something that I've done, I hope. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about how I started off in developing in hand lettering. And when I was at university and when I started off, I really didn't do any hand lettering at all. I was much more, I did a lot of photography, I did quite figurative work, which I won't show you because it's terrible. And I did some commercial work, I did some editorial, and I did some stuff for a few publishing houses, but I really felt at the beginning that I just didn't have a niche, and I didn't really know where I was trying to push my work or what industries I wanted to work with. And so my breakthrough project with hand lettering came from a job that I got for Harvey Nichols very, very early on in my career. I was commissioned to design an invitation for a Halloween press day for Harvey Nichols, and I did that. It wasn't anything to do with lettering. I did a sort of figurative illustration for it. But having done that, my details were sent to the lady who ran the press event itself, and she phoned me up and she said, "Okay, we've seen your illustration that you did for that. We have this enormous black wall at the back of the event, and we want you to just design a great big piece of lettering to go across the wall." So I said, okay, well, not something I've ever done before. It's nothing that's in my portfolio, but of course that's absolutely fine. I'll do that for you. She said, we've got 3 days to do it, and I think they paid me about 50 quid. So I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'll do it. That sounds brilliant. And I had absolutely no idea where to start. I'd done a bit of lettering, but it wasn't something I did. I'd never worked on a large format. The wall was at least as big as this wall here. But I said I'd do it, so I thought, wow, okay. So my biggest paranoia about this piece of work was that I'd never worked in vector, so I'd never designed something that needed to be blown up to a large scale, and I was so worried about it. And I think in hindsight I should have just done it and it would have been fine at a smaller scale, but because I was so paranoid that I couldn't work in vector, I decided that the answer was to draw the lettering as big as it would be on the wall, which I did. I drew it. So I printed out, it was based on a font, I printed out the fonts, and then I stuck up on my spare room wall, which is about a quarter of the size of the room it would be, all of the letters hanging down, and I illustrated around them, and I did the whole design, and then I must have scanned it in little pieces. I don't think I slept. I think the final file was about 300 gigabytes, so they must have been really pleased to receive it. But it looked fine. This is it. So this was on a huge wall. And I thought, when I was putting through my pitch for this presentation, I thought, I can't show that, it's horrible. But then I thought, actually, this is a really good example. I don't take pictures of it. I don't want anyone else to see that. It's your eyes only. But I thought, when I was thinking about what to say, that my lack of technical skill in this particular project was really key to how I started doing what I do and how I've evolved. Because as you can see, the graphic design of this is not good. You know, look at the gap. Look at the gap between the O's. So bad. But I plonked my font out there, and then I thought, okay, this isn't good, but I don't know how to do kerning, and I don't know how to use Illustrator, so I'm just going to make it really ornate and really beautiful, and I'm going to use my illustration to compensate for this lack of technical ability. And I think this was the beginning of something quite important for my career, because when I was at university, I really enjoyed all the messy stuff. I wanted to do painting, and I wanted to do printing and drawing and life drawing, but I was always maybe a bit snooty about the design stuff, and I didn't want to do any graphic design. I didn't want to learn Illustrator. I didn't want to learn about fonts, and it's something that I still really struggle with to this day. But I also think that it is to thank, in a way, for the fact that I've developed this really illustrative style. So I maybe have turned this flaw into a skill, because in a way now, my illustration, my lettering kind of lean on each other and are equally important, and I've used that to my advantage. So that was the start. That was the first kind of big piece of lettering that I did. And then I sort of continued to work in lettering. I got a lot of work from showing this in my portfolio, and a lot of the people who were interested in this were in publishing. So, and I think that's another reason for my focus on hand lettering, is that the most consistent stream of work that I have had has been in publishing, and I still do a lot of book covers. And obviously lettering is a huge part of this. And I think I started with publishing. I was talking to Ben about this earlier, because I found it a really approachable industry to begin with, and I could see how lettering and illustration were so relevant to book jacket design. And it's a small format. I found the people working in publishing were really interested in meeting illustrators. It was easy to get appointments. Back then I used to do a lot of visits and trips around with my portfolio, and they liked illustrators who were into type and who had a sort of their own take on it. So when I started working in publishing, I didn't sell myself specifically as a lettering artist, but when I did roughs for people, it was always the hand-lettered versions that appealed to the art directors. And with publishing, there's the obvious kind of balance always with illustration and lettering, whether it's a font and an illustration, a photograph, whether it's hand lettered, however it's done, it's that balance that tells a story, and they have to complement each other, but neither of them can sort of be battling for supremacy. And I found that really interesting, and I found that really relevant to what I do. So I thought it would be fun to count how many book jackets I've ever designed, because I've done loads of really bad ones, and some good ones too, I hope. But I have actually done 467 book jackets. Ridiculous. Yeah, I'm really old. But yeah, so that basically, I think that is another reason why I've evolved to do what I do, because that's a lot of practice, and that's a lot of practice specifically in the interaction of type and illustration, or lettering and illustration. So I'm going to show you some of that, so we don't have to look at that anymore. I'm going to show you some bad stuff first. Well, not bad, but funny stuff. So when I started out working in publishing, I found a little niche in romantic historic fiction lettering. Okay, so this is one I was commissioned. I was just asked to do some lettering. There was no more information. The Duchess Hunt. So that was what I did, and this is what they sent me back. Sample. They didn't use my author lettering in the end, but they did use it. And the same company there listed me. The Duchess of Sin, the Lady of Seduction, and the Countess of Scandal. I didn't do the illustrations, by the way. But I feel like they're pretty special. But I actually, do you know what, I really enjoyed it and it was fine. And now I haven't done any ones like that recently. So here are a few recent covers that I did. So this is more the stuff I'm doing now. I generally get asked to do both the illustration and the type lettering. Oh, I'm confusing myself now. The lettering. And they're quite different. You know, the styles of lettering are really quite different in a lot of the work that I do. But they're still kind of a consistent style. There's still a kind of maximalist streak to everything. There's there's lots going on. But it is about the balance. You know, sometimes the lettering is very simple and very straight, and sometimes it's more ornate. So yeah, and I think the other thing I was going to say was it's hard not to notice the huge popularity of hand lettering at the moment. And I think to begin with, I thought, oh, you know, this is a bit frightening. Suddenly, everybody is doing this. You know, you look at Pinterest or Instagram, and you see all these affirmations, badly hand lettered. And oh no, is this what, you know, is this the kind of thing I'm doing? And like, how has this become so huge and so mainstream? But actually, you know, while there are quite a lot of bad examples, there's lots of great stuff out there at the moment. And lots of really talented people who are doing things in calligraphy and you know, more digital lettering and hand lettering and all sorts. And I think there's just so many opportunities in this field for us now. And it all comes hand in hand with, I think, the resurgence of craft and everything being handmade. And I know you had a girl who did a talk about paper engineering not that long ago. You know, and that was craft, wasn't it? Yeah, and I just thought that it's the same kind of thing. It's basically brands recognising the importance of a human touch to what they're represented by. People aren't as interested in everything being slick and digital and, you know, shiny. I think people like to know about the artist behind the work, and they like to know that it's hand drawn, and I think for people like me that's really exciting. You know, when I was sat on the train on the way here, and literally just where I was sitting, I looked up and there were two adverts, and they both had hand lettering on them. There was a theatre poster for the Kite Runner, and it had this lovely sort of painty handwriting on it. And then there was an advert for Loaf sofas. Everyone knows about Loaf, and that's sort of handwritten identity. And it just seems to be everywhere at the moment. And I get asked to do a lot of logos and identity, which is an obvious kind of direction for lettering. But then there's packaging books, but posters. There's so many things that it can apply to, which makes it really exciting again, because it's so diverse. There's so many ways that you can use your work. So I thought I'd just show you a few of the more unusual projects that I've done, that I've used hand lettering for. So this was some chocolate. I did this for an American brand a few years ago, and I did all of the exterior packaging for all their chocolate bars. But then my favourite bit of the project was that they actually got me to design the lettering that they used for the bar moulds. So all the chocolate had lettering on it as well.
Did you get samples?
Loads of samples. For once. Yeah, I actually think I got my agent to get it in the contract that I have to have lots of samples sent over, because it was in America as well, and sometimes they're really stingy with sending stuff over, but they were not. Okay, this is, oh okay, I'm going to play this. This is a mural. A mural? Oh. Okay, I'm going to talk over it because there's no sound. But, can you not hear me? Fine, it's fine. If you just watch the bit that you'll don't you know where I am. Thank you. Okay. Oh, that's better. Can you hear me now? Okay, so this is a mural that I did in a. I did it, by the way. I got the time lapse working.
Oh, that was
thanks to
great.
Rob. It doesn't have any sound, but it's fine. So I did this in a design agency, a local design agency in Brighton, and they just had this enormous list of their brand, kind of the things that they thought identified them as a brand, and they wanted it in the meeting room, painted on the wall. And it was their brand values, that's it. And then they were going to have their TV screen in the centre, which is why it's got a big gap. But this was just such a pleasure to do. I had completely free reign with what the style that I wanted to do it in, and I got to go there and just paint a wall for 2 days, which when you sit hunched over a desk sketching and scanning was just really nice and really therapeutic. And yeah, that's me doing it. A truck. I did a truck. I did about 6 trucks actually for McDonald's. Who did this big campaign which had this sort of paper cut lettering that they wanted. So that was quite cool. And then, I don't know if any of you have heard of the art of ping pong, which is I think they do it every year or every couple of years. This design agency gives blank ping pong bats to about 30 artists, and you can do whatever you want with them. So obviously I wanted to do something to do with lettering, but I wanted to sort of make it in a different way and experiment with something that I hadn't done before. So I designed the piece of lettering, and then I took it to a guy that I know in Brighton who does marquetry. So he makes that amazing French kind of style furniture where it's all beautiful intricate patterns inlaid into the wood. And so this is all cut out of different types of wood and then inlaid into the ping pong bat. And they auctioned them all off for charity. So that was quite a good one. And this is a little sneak preview. This is a job that I'm working on at the moment, which is not quite finished, but I thought I'd show you anyway because it's quite different. And this is in Brighton as well, where I live. In the marina, I don't know if anyone has ever been there, but they have moored in the marina a 30-foot barge, which has been taken over and renovated by a charity who will make it into a community centre and an arts centre. And they asked me but the barge, because it's moored in the marina, you can see the roof of it from the boardwalk where all the bars and restaurants and things are. You look down on this big flat roof, which is 30 metres long, and this is going to be painted on the roof of the barge. I don't know how much is going to happen, but that's what it will be like. So if anyone has any ideas, please let me know. I feel like I've been talking really fast. Okay, and this brings me to my biggest and most exciting lettering project, which I did last year for the publishing house Hachette. And they came to me with a brief, which was, we have a brand new building. They were moving all of their different publishing imprints into one huge, really beautiful building near Blackfriars by the Thames. And they wanted to somehow get a way to put the 4,000 authors, the names of 4,000 authors that they've ever published, across the walls of this ginormous lift lobby and the stairwell in this building, 5 stories high. And they said, this is something you can do. I said, yeah, that was fine. No problem. And they wanted the design to somehow reflect the location. They wanted to make each imprint, each sector of the publishing house distinct with colours or whatever, however it is to do it. And they wanted it to be like a journey through the building. So it started off in the 1800s when they first opened all the way up to the present day. And so, yeah, this is what we did. And this is how it looked in the end. So what I did was I hand wrote 4,000 author names on paper. And then we vectored them and changed and coloured them, and then they were all cut out of vinyl. So every letter is cut from vinyl and then applied to this black glass which the lobby was made of. But it's probably easier just to show you this little video which they made. I look really serious in this video. Which is a kind of general conclusion, I guess. It's not specifically about hand lettering. But I feel like for me, the most exciting work that I've done has been when I've accepted briefs that I've felt completely daunted by, and actually quite underqualified. I've never done anything like that before I accepted the brief. So, you know, these were not honed lettering skills, but after 4,000 author names, they were. You know, and it's the same with, after 467 books, I think I'm qualified to design a book cover. But to me, the important thing is the process and the collaboration, and just to be bold about it and to take things that, to accept things that you are not necessarily comfortable with doing, like speaking at this event. Because that's what keeps it interesting, isn't it? And that's what keeps me motivated and keeps me excited about what I do. The end.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we have some time for questions. I'm going to get it back on.
Okay, sure. I ran away.
Does anyone have? Oh, sorry. Does anyone have a question for Kate? Right at the back, of course.
illustrator, or I mean, do you help yourself doing the, for example, the book covers? Do you draw them, scan them, and then how do you actually end up doing the final?
Oh yeah, okay, that's a good question. I didn't cover that, but so everything is hand drawn, but then I put everything into Photoshop. Usually, if it's a small scale book cover or something like that. But if it's for advertising or packaging, then Illustrator, yeah. So I have had to learn those things. And I rely heavily on Photoshop and being able to change and erase.
That's how I do it as well.
Yeah. I don't have a kind of drawer of beautiful, beautiful drawings somewhere that I've kept. It's just scrappy little things that I scan and throw away.
2 questions. Silly one. What determined the size of the author names on that last piece?
Oh, well, I was told that the important ones had to be bigger, so they were, yeah.
Nice. And then second one, more just about like how do you stay inspired? Like traditionally, illustrators are supposed to go to like drawing classes, keep their skills up, and then maybe go to a gallery and look at some cool artists. Like where do you go for inspiration and keeping your skills up?
Okay, that's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, this might sound a bit of a cop-out, but I would definitely say that I get a lot of inspiration from the commercial briefs that come to me. I'm the kind of illustrator who I'm not itching to do personal work, and I know that's probably terrible to say, but I don't want to make posters that I can sell on Etsy. I love collaborating with graphic designers, and I love what they get me to do and the things that they bring out of me. So, like the examples I showed you, I wouldn't have known about that Argentinian painting thing if I hadn't been told, oh, have a look at this, this might be inspirational for this lettering. And I looked at it, and now I've got a whole board on Pinterest where I've collected all these cool Argentinian street signs, and that is a source of inspiration for me, but that actually came from a client. So I do find that the briefs I get are so different, and I get, I get a lot of inspiration from what other people's ideas, and just discussing how a project's going to go with the designers. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Do you have any more questions?
I just want to say I've been to Hachette and I've seen it and it's fantastic. And I was just wondering how long you had to design it all?
Yeah, it took, it actually only took a couple of months to do, but it took a couple of months of work. I think I had to do 250 when I was just doing the lettering bit, and I had to sort of work out the shapes that it would make, draw these lines for the river, and then blow them up in sections and fill all the author names in, and then inevitably, when I pieced them back together on the computer, they didn't quite match up. So the process was really painstaking. And I think I did like 250 names a night at one stage. And I had to come home from working on other stuff and sit down. I watched a lot of box sets because I could sort of write and look at the same time. But yeah, it was quite intense.
I had a practical question about spell checking handwritten and writing, and whether or not you've ever finished the job and realised you've put 2 eyes in it.
I have, yeah. I mean, actually, the Hachette one was ridiculous because I had so many names just printed out on a PDF. No, I didn't even print it out actually, so it was digitally on a PDF. And I had this kind of weird mental block in my head that I couldn't spell the name Jonathan. And like everybody is called Jonathan. And I think I put an extra H in it, or I missed an H out, and every single time the spell checking lady would just email me, she's like, you spelled Jonathan wrong there. And there. So that does happen. But usually so then we could just go back and do it. This was before they did like really extensive spell checking. I think 2 or 3 people did it before we went to print. So, whew. So there was actually, when we put it all up on the walls, there would look like a few bits got damaged, or lots of the dots of eyes came off when they pulled all the paper backing off. So that's what there's an image of me in there where I'm like sort of hunched over in the corner, and that's what I was doing, is like sticking extra little eye dots on, and yeah, we did a bit of that.
Sort of a two-part question. With something like that, did you have any idea how long it would take you? Because it was something on such a huge scale and something so new. And did they give you a budget, or did you just try and work out what to quote them? Like, how did that work?
Well, for budgets for my work, that's what my agents do. So they had that discussion, and they did have a budget, and that was negotiated until they felt like it was fair for them and fair for me. And yeah, I mean, there was a lot of questioning of how long do you think this would take me, but I think we felt like we had to be quite vague, to be honest, because we had no idea. And also there's a lot of other people involved, you know, there was the spell checking, and there was the graphic history company who researched all the names, so we couldn't really commit to a time scale. So I think I said, you know, once we know, you know, maybe per week I could do roughly this many names, but you know, they didn't hold us to it, and it ran on a bit, but it wasn't anyone's specific fault because there were so many people involved. So yeah, it was fine.
We have time for one more question if we have one.
Okay, so I did a bit of research. You lived in Abu Dhabi?
Yes.
Yes. So I don't know how long you lived there, but I'm interested, did you do much in the way of Arabic type, or like how did it work for you? Did you have clients out there, and what are the differences compared to the UK?
Yeah, so I lived in Abu Dhabi for just over 3 years. We came back about 4 years ago. And I'd already got really well set up before we went. And we went for my husband's work, so I was only planning to do what I do now over there. And obviously, as I've been freelance for quite a few years, I knew that was fine because most clients don't want to speak to me anyway. And they actually, and I was slightly nervous about that, and I thought, oh, you know, will it put people off if I'm in a totally different time zone? But actually, I did quite extensive projects with clients who had no idea where I was, because they send everything by email. If they need to, you know, if we needed to book in a call, then we would. And then they always found it quite exciting when they found out that I was somewhere exotic. And as far as the work out there is concerned, there's much less freelance work. So most of my clients were still in the States and in the UK. But because there's not really, well, there certainly wasn't at the time much of a scene from freelancers. You couldn't get the visas, so people weren't looking for illustrators out there. But I did do a few bits of editorial, and I did some exhibitions, and I took part in some kind of community things. And the Arabic, which I was kind of excited about the idea of maybe learning Arabic and incorporating into my work, and so many people talked to me about it, and about how, you know, the style of my lettering, it would be such a good thing to explore. But actually, it's a question of legibility. So I didn't learn Arabic because nobody speaks Arabic in Abu Dhabi. I don't know if anyone's been there, but everyone speaks English. And I tried, but no. I would try and practice with taxi drivers and stuff, but they weren't Arabic themselves, so they just didn't do research. But for work, so a huge part of my job, which I haven't really touched on, is about legibility and about how ornate and how intricate you can make something while still being really easily legible. And how, you know, how much can you get away with? How many swooshes can you do without, you know, taking away from the message? And if you don't understand Arabic and you don't speak it, you can't really design an Arabic word when you can't sort of mess with the rules if you don't know the rules of the lettering. So I think I would have had to study for a few more years to get away with that. But it would be an interesting thing to maybe collaborate with somebody who did do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. We're going to take a sort of 10-minute break now. So there's some beers at the back. Get yourself a beer.
If there's any left.
If there's any left. How Well, we'll see.
See what it is.
You can smoke, go at the front, toilets are over there, have a mingle, chat to each other, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes? 10 minutes, just under 10 minutes.
So make yourself comfortable. Yeah. Okay, so now we have the wonderful Tallon, multi-talented, but also like you do loads of different things. Loads of different things. So I'm sure Ben will talk about it, but as well as being an illustrator, letterer, you also run podcasts, Arrest All Mimics. If you haven't heard it, please do go and have a listen. It's fabulous, and also you always put it out for the Illo as well, which I appreciate. And also, so that you've written a book on your experiences as a freelance creative, which Ben will tell you more about this, I'm sure. But definitely check out his book as well. So put your hands together for Ben Tallon.
Cheers for coming, everyone. It's a big turnout, big compliment. Thanks a lot. So yeah, as Willa said, my name's Ben Tallon. I'm an illustrator. Do a lot of different things based around that. So increasingly more and more media stuff. And in the theme of tonight, a lot of hand lettering work, which is had its own kind of journey. So it was quite refreshing to be asked to talk about that stuff tonight. It's the first time I've never really specifically spoke about it. So it kind of forced me to look back and work out, first of all, if there was a thread, and if so, what was it? There was a bit of a thread, so that's all right. So I started, like a lot of people, I graduated from a degree in illustration, and I was very confused. Coming out from that, where do you go, what do you do? It's quite a culture shock when you find out there are no positions of employment. It's not what you want to tell your parents, so that was a bit of a crash landing. So I spent a couple of years scratching around various jobs for temping agencies, and then started sharing studios and just meeting people and doing it in my own time around these jobs. So these were the foundations of my style, which included a lot of lettering. And I suppose early influences were graphic activism, based around people like Banksy, and through Banksy I found Ken Garland and Jonathan Barnbrook and Blake Larat, and all these people who had something to say and some commentary on things, and that was just early inspiration. It had always been there in some kind of way. So I didn't really give any credence to the lettering that was going on. It was just, I was in a position where I couldn't conceptually represent what I wanted to do with my illustrative work. I didn't have the skills to do an all singing, all dancing, double page spread. So my way around that was to support it and prop it up with this lettering stuff, and these were quite subversive, quite bizarre illustrations that I was doing when I had nobody to work for. So sat in the studio doing this stuff around the clock, and I would divide my time by contacting clients to tell them about my portfolio, and in the time around that stuff to keep my mind going, I suppose, was just building a brand, building a style. So this was it, and I never really thought too much about the lettering, but I guess I was kind of drawn to the impact of it and how I could say something with like a certain immediacy that my drawing didn't give. Come from a graphic design background. I did a BTEC. I started a degree in graphic design, so I was quite interested in the marriage of image and type. Didn't have any graphic design skills, so I drew it. So there you go. That was the sort of early stuff. That was an early Christmas card, believe it or not, that I sent out to clients. It was kind of social commentary. There were a lot of horrible, unprovoked attacks going on in Preston, where I was living at the time, on people. It's quite nasty stuff. So I wanted to, make a comment about that. And I don't know why Christmas cards. Anyway, there you go. So it was kind of making sense for me. It was the energy in my drawing was something that people picked up on quite early, and I was quite robust in trying to arrange meetings and go out and see clients. And one thing that I learned from them, you get to sit there and you see their facial expressions, you see their body language. It gives you a little bit more of a clue. And they would laugh quite often, which was nice, because these stuff were kind of done to make my studio mates laugh. And my drawing was very loose, very fast. That's the way I liked it to be. I liked to create volumes of work and not overthink things, because when I overthought things, it turned to shit basically, and it was very stagnant, very overwrought work. So these sort of pieces got picked up on by people. So it was interesting to me that this lettering was getting noticed, and it gave me a great capability for humour. So the fact that it wasn't the finished type, it didn't have perfect kerning, it didn't make it sit where you might expect it to sit on a balanced document, was quite, you could be quite quirky with it, and you could, that had its own kind of tinge of humour without saying too much. So it was something I just enjoyed doing, but the truth is I kept it only to my personal work. I didn't want to put this stuff out there because my tutors at uni, and quite rightly so, they really underlined the importance of not using type as a crutch. So, you know, they said, look, you're illustrators, your job is to tell the story visually. Get rid of the type. Unless the type is saying something that the image can't, leave it well alone. So I had that voice kind of back in the back of my head at the time when I was creating this stuff. So it was like, yeah, okay, I shared off the Obama image later because it had a political context, but the rest of it was done, in all honesty, as an in-joke. Danny Ellison now is a really good friend of mine, he's a close illustrator. And I was sharing a studio with the guy at the time, and this was nothing more than, you know, a quiet afternoon and something to make him laugh. But the reaction I got from it, I thought, I've got to see if anyone else laughs at this stuff, because if they do, then it might be onto something. And it did get quite a positive reaction. So the Tyson versus Thatcher stuff was an extension of that project, which I called the Versus series, creating these kind of wrestling/boxing posters. Being a big wrestling fan myself, it was just something to cling on to, and you know, just a vehicle to use this stuff. So it was kind of a shame that I didn't really push it out, but when I eventually did, the Tyson versus Thatcher piece caught the eye of the director at Channel 4, and it made him laugh so much that he remembered it. So I went to this exhibition, I think it was a park in London, and he was asking all sorts of questions about this stuff, and it turns out he was putting on an exhibition with his partner at their house. They had this huge house in Crystal Palace, and he said, look, I want to use your stuff in this exhibition, but I don't know if you've ever done any animated work, but I work for E4 and we're working on skins, and I would really love you to discuss working on the new campaign for the new season. So this was the first job that I got outside of editorial illustration, and granted it's all still quite heavily image based, but I finally got the balls to kind of see the value in this stuff and say, look, would you be averse to the idea of me using some lettering within this project, because I think it would really sit well. Maybe we could have a go at, you know, redrawing the logo for E4. And what you find is that these companies of that stature are quite kind of reluctant to use that stuff because they've been so corporately branded and they've been given these brand guidelines that they often don't want to break them. But this guy said, yeah, we'll go for it, yeah, why not? If that's the mood we're going for, let's do it. So this was just an open suggestion and something that got picked up, and it was quite exciting to think that I'd taken on not just the job of illustration, but I was working closely with the directors and pushing the lettering now into this environment, and it was really it's a real breakthrough looking back. Later down the line, I did 3 consecutive years of the Skins commercials for these guys, and the 3rd year they asked me if they could reuse the version that I drew on their Twitter, on their Facebook, on all the social media channels. So I got a reuse fee. It was really nice to to see that stuff being picked up in its own right. A little later on, I worked with Lufthansa on a campaign, and part of the brief was to integrate the lettering, but it was nice to look at how this stuff didn't need to be the hero of the image, and how you could push this stuff back and really find the balance between the two disciplines, because there is quite a stark contrast between the two. You know, I was never sure whether to just pitch illustration, pitch lettering, or throw the two in there together. I think it was a job by job basis that I'd take that into consideration, and still do. But I was really kind of happy with how this stuff lived together, much more than anything I've done previously. So this sort of went on for a while, and I was known for the line drawing and the full colour work, and I started doing some work for WWE, who was a bit of a bucket list client for me. And the creative director there was very open. He would call me up and say, look, we've got this and that coming up. Let's have a conversation. Let's see if we can get you involved with things. You've got quite a broad range of skills going on. And he asked me straight up, he said, look, can you do me some lettering? I want to do this poster where it's quite simply a marriage between the photography and quite a bold lettering style. We want to use John Cena's catchphrases. We want to do a simple poster, basically. It's for the younger end of the market. So I said, yeah, of course you say yeah, you should always say yeah, but there are pitfalls that come with that, and on this occasion I didn't really realise that, and everything fell into place. The only amendment I had to make was add 2 more phrases, and I think I had to correct 2 of the characters. So I had to just a very simple bit of Photoshop to knock a couple of them out and bring them back in. But I think the message the point I'm trying to make is you be careful about what you commit to to that end, because lettering is a whole different animal. What I totally underestimated was that the detail in this stuff can really kill you if you don't know what you're doing. So the next time he came back, he said, look, I've got this feature, and like the rock's coming back. He was all very secret, and as a wrestling fan, this was like geek heaven at the time. But he said, I've got this spread, I want to do something really impactful. So he showed me a couple of examples and said, look, I've seen this stuff. He showed me about 4 or 5 examples and said, look, I don't want any mimicry of this stuff, and I know you wouldn't do that, but I want this kind of life, I want this kind of energy. And so I said, yeah, of course, yeah, you know, how long, when do you want it? So they wanted it to come like 4 days, I think it was at the time. So I took it on and I sent the first draft the following morning, genuinely thinking that it would be done. And it got straight rejection. He said, I don't think it's working, I think it's very wooden, I think, you know, we need to re-look at this. So straight away, like the adrenaline was going. It's just you know, with this stuff, it's quite automatic, so I hadn't been pushed into a position where I was asked to do anything again, apart from the couple of characters that I mentioned on the previous piece. So I tried it again and it got rejected, and 3 days later we're still going through the mill for like 4 words, and I genuinely thought I was about to drop a bollock and mess up a deadline, which I'd not done to this point, and I'd always got things done early and got it in there. Well, I wanted to kind of touch upon the things that make not just lettering, but in terms of the style that I do, it's very painterly and it's very organic, and you're made to feel like it's, you know, your 5-year-old's handwriting and anyone could do it, but that's the deception, and I fell for it hook, line and sinker. I totally underestimated the fact that this stuff can be more complex than it looks. So the panic really sets in after 3 days when you're sitting there and you've resorted to try to trace the stuff that you've been given as reference. Horrible, horrible stuff, and I really, you know, that it's bad. The stroke, for one thing, is really important, so it's all about the flow and the arm movement, and that can only be a natural thing because everyone's got a different sort of way of doing this stuff. The flow of it, again, it's got to flow right throughout the lettering, it's got to feel in sync with the image, you've got to be sympathetic to the photography. So much to take into consideration, none of this I had thought about, so I just ended up in a black hole of amendments. Luckily for me, the guy who was creative director was very, very experienced and he knew how to get me out of the hole. Talked me down, we sat there, we went through it on Skype, we did all the things, we looked at the texture, we looked at the weight of the character, even the breaking of the line, you know, that the feeling that the paint is running out, it's very, very hard to control, so it was very, very tough. That's what we ended up with. I don't particularly like it, I think it's very wooden to this day. But we got it over the line, they used it, and everybody was happy at the company, so I guess job done. But as a perfectionist, it gave me a real rocket up my arse, and you know, it made me really think about taking jobs on in the future. So we sat down, and one of the best bits of advice I can give is if you are in a position where you get to talk to an art director as opposed to an email, sit them down, take them out for a beer, go for dinner, whatever it needs to be, talk to them and ask them about, you know, their view on this stuff, because in this example, this guy was a real mentor of mine, and he would start to send me these samples and say, look, I think if you put the time into this and you work at this stuff, I really struggle to find people who can do it well, so you can be the guy, or you can at least become one of the guys who does this stuff. So I guess it's in my personality not to kind of back away from that challenge, so I took this on and I thought, okay, I'm going to give this a go. I enjoyed doing it despite the scare. The end result was pretty cool, and I really enjoyed working with photography, and that gave me a new direction as opposed to working from photography. So I've been doing these illustrations for Arsenal at the time, quite a lot of them, and I've become friends with their photographers at the club. So I called him up one day and said, look, this is a bizarre request, but I've developed this lettering style, I'm looking to practice it, I really like photography, will there be any chance that I can have a play with some of them? If you like what I do, we can use it on our websites. If you don't like it, we'll never speak of it again. And he was like, hey, whatever, it's fine, use it how you want, as long as it's not commercial, you know, go for it. So he essentially gave me the keys to the castle and said, you know, there's the logins, and I open it up to like 10,000 images, and it's the whole archive of the football club's, you know, stuff, basically, and they've all got the rights on this stuff. So as a football fan, this is amazing, so I'm overwhelmed with choice, and I just kind of tucked myself away for weeks and practiced and just hammered this stuff. And even then, it's not amazing, and it's never quite perfect, but I felt a lot more comfortable about the energy in this stuff. I mentioned earlier about the breakage of the line, so things like on the H there and the M, it felt a little bit more like somebody could have come in and done that on the image directly. It had a certain level of conviction, so I kind of ran with it and just practiced, and I sent this stuff back, and it worked, and the club loved it. I ended up down the line, I got commissions from this stuff, doing t-shirts, and I just think networks are really important. If you're going to start lettering and you want to work with photography, go and find good photographers, because there's people out there who'll be happy to collaborate with you, and you end up with a nice skill swap and a really nice kind of different element to what you're doing. It's just as another example, and as this stuff progressed, you start to realise, particularly for me as a football fan, there was this whole rabid audience of Arsenal fans out there who I knew would want to see this stuff. At the end of the day, I had the club's archive, so I could pick out all the heroes and I could run with it. So you get feedback like, what the fuck is this? My 5-year-old could have done this. That was literally a comment on one of the posts that I made. Almost retaliated and got into a slanging match with them, and I just thought, leave it. There's always going to be people who don't get it. So I left it alone, but I started to play with it and really break the page and kind of start to get experimental with compositions and got varying feedback from different things, and it was a whole learning process of sending this stuff out into the world. So the next step was to get out of my comfort zone. So, wrestling, football, these were all things that I'd grown up with. So I thought, okay, fashion. I know nothing about fashion. So I sort of... You what? I
said you coordinated your outfit well with the colours.
It's not bad, is it? So I, a good friend of mine is a photographer, and he was working at this event called Vintage by the Sea. It's run by Wayne Hemingway in Morecambe. So they had this really awesome thing in the Midland Hotel, like this huge Art Deco building with all these people doing. This lady's from like a vintage hair salon going on the day where people can go in and get these looks done. This old guy was part of the dance competition. He was one of the winners. So we just got in there and we got loads of images. So I worked on the images, trying out different fonts. The brush thing was one thing, but once I started to feel comfortable with that, I realised that I had quite a limited audience if I stuck just to that. So I started to look at fonts, and sometimes it would be nice just to paint a font as it looked. Other times, elaborate on it, take it somewhere new. This stuff was all very automatic. That's essentially the same kind of handwriting I would use for anything else. But it really broadened the audience, and it started to attract a few new eyes by playing and really pushing yourself outside of that comfort zone. So one of the biggest turning points was working in 3D, so working off the two-dimensional page, which was something I'd not really done in my illustration or in my lettering work. And a friend of mine started producing a very low budget, practically no budget film in Manchester where I was living at the time. And he asked me if I could design him a film poster. I didn't have the budget to work on that. Sorry, he didn't have the budget to warrant working on it. So I said no at the start. And I said, but what I will do is I'd like to get experience of art direction in film and production design. So if you can give me access to the film set, working with the actors and the rest of it, that'd be pretty valuable for me. So I will take it on as part of that job. So I get there on set, and I'm the only person, I'm the entire art department. There's nobody else working on this stuff. So I've been given this basement, and they're filming in 3 days' time, and that's it. So I used the speed and the automatic nature of this stuff, and I went down B&Q and bought these 3 quid rolls of lining paper and kind of stuck them up, played with the lighting, bought all these cheap lamps and looked at the way that they look under different lighting conditions, and created sets based around it. And it was a lot of fun doing that, and it was all original artworks as opposed to digitally composed. But the thing it made me think about is that this stuff all of a sudden was not the hero of the image, which was a first at the time for me. So this stuff had to be seen, really off camera, behind actors, passing backgrounds. Maybe you'd never see it if the director changed his mind. And I thought that was quite important to consider this stuff in a different kind of different role, different responsibility. And I had the privilege of talking to Annie Atkins just this weekend, who was graphic designer on the Grand Budapest Hotel and on Bridge of Spies and all these other big movies. And I was lucky enough to interview her for the podcast. And one thing that really stood out from our chat was that the role of a graphic designer in film, and this applied to the stuff that I was doing here, was that it's the stuff that everybody sees but nobody really gives a shit about. And that's in the nicest possible way. It's that its role is to sort of create that environment, whereas the focus is on something else completely. So it was a real eye-opener in the fact that this stuff was very, very transient, and you know, the three-dimensional thing was quite important. So the same guy I mentioned earlier got in touch very soon after I posted that on my website, and he said, look, I've had a quiet afternoon, I've been browsing your work, I've seen these banners, tell me more. So I explained the job, I said what happened. And he said, okay, well, would you be interested in creating 15 of these things and FedExing them over to the States for me, because we've got this big shoot coming up where we want to represent the villains on the wrestling in a really kind of dark, moodily lit environment. So I did. This was incredible. Like, again, for me as a fan, this was amazing. But he encouraged me to bring in some of my illustration and really start to think about the way that the more naive aspects and the peripheral doodle style stuff of my illustrations worked with the lettering. And it was brilliant, because I had to have conversations with the creative department. You know, we had to discuss the way they were shooting these things. Again, how they were lit. A whole new thing for me was a different surface. So I'd only worked on this nice cartridge paper and kind of, you know, very controlled surfaces, whereas all of a sudden, due to the budget constraints, I was back on this lining paper. But actually, the disadvantage turned out to be a real big advantage, because the bleed and the kind of crumple that you got in these rolls was really quite suited to the brief on this occasion. And it was the first time I took it truly large scale, so again, that was a challenge. I did all these in my kitchen. I remember getting ink on the roof and having to tell some flat inspector that it was there when we moved in, and had to argue against visual itineraries, which was a bit daunting, but we got it over the line. And it was just nice, because it was the first time I took this stuff fully organic and painted on surfaces. So again, it was about creating moods and atmospheres as opposed to a hero of an image. So what happened was I reached a crossroads where my portfolio had become quite confused. I had illustration, which I built my reputation on, and all of a sudden you've got photography creeping in there. So to me, I could see the cohesion between the mark making in this stuff and the illustration, but to somebody who's got 5 minutes, which is probably most art directors these days, it's very difficult to breeze through that stuff and make any kind of sense of it, and that's quite important as an illustrator. So I sat down and I said to my agency, I said, look, I'm really loving this stuff, I'm building quite a large volume of work, would you consider letting me have 2 portfolios and split this stuff down the middle? And thankfully for me they did. So I called it Tallon, which is kind of putting my head on the chopping block for graphic designers, because as Kate mentioned earlier, it's not type, it's lettering. So I'm walking a tightrope there, but there you go, it's got a ring to it, it's TT, you can brand it, and I really had to start thinking about how I package this stuff. You know, I had to have clarity, I had to read immediately who was the market. I didn't really know. I'd done this stuff for people who I'd become friends with, who would ask me to do it very much on the fly. I'd done it in my own time, but all of a sudden I was in a position where I had to, you know, I had to give a description. I had to go out to clients and say, this is what I do, this is what you should pay me, and this is why, which is always a challenge. But if you don't have full confidence and you don't fully understand what you're doing, that can be a real minefield. So I came up against pricing misconceptions. You would get people hitting you up with their hands through private messages going, hey, how's it going? I'm from wherever, I've seen your stuff, we've got 50 quid, can you knock us up a word? And it's like, no mate, it's believe me, it's not that simple. There've been a lot of roadblocks along the way, don't take the piss. So, you know, it's like you had to kind of re-educate people because it looked so scruffy, and it looked, again, like I said, it looked like a child had done it, but that was the illusion. And once I got control over that, that became quite a valuable thing. So it was kind of nice, because my illustration was, you know, it was renewed with its impact, and this stuff stood alone all of a sudden, so I could jump between the two. And I'm someone who loves variation on jobs, so that was kind of a nice thing for me. Then what I realised quite soon after this, like Kate mentioned, when you've got mastery of both disciplines, it puts you in a position where people will ask you to just take on jobs. So poster designs in this instance. I'd gone from working on the stuff with the banners, where people would, you know, really give me some great art direction and take me through it, and it was a real team effort. And then all of a sudden you work for a different branch of the company, and these guys would be like, we've got a poster, it's going to be A1, who do you want to work on and what do you want to do? Go. And that was it. I was given full creative reign, which was really exciting, but all of a sudden I can do the lettering and I can do the image, so all they did was stuck the logo in the top corner, so that was really exciting for me, and it just opens up a whole bigger scope of industry, and all of a sudden you can really start to analyse where this stuff marries in the middle, and what new markets that can open up for you. So live was the next thing. I started to pick up queries saying, can you do this stuff in front of the camera? And thanks to the experience on the low budget film, I understood how this stuff was all set up and how it worked and why the lighting was important. And that was cool. So this was a commission for the Premier League, and they wanted to shoot this promo in a derelict house in Peckham, and they wanted to go with this whole revenge narrative, and it was very moody. And they wanted me to sort of be lurking in some dark corner and painting this stuff, and that's kind of cool because you can be a little big movie plot for a while. So that's kind of fun. Right, Rob, I've forgotten how to get onto video. Rob. I've forgotten how to get onto the video.
Come on, Tallon.
Oh, there we go. This is why I can't be graphic designer.
Come on
Not working.
Oh yeah, we have to. Okay.
So this was the promo that I worked on. This is sort of how it ended up. So you can see how the lettering does become the hero in this instance, and the fact that I could do it under pressure, I could do numerous takes, I could do it fast. It really played into my hands, and I started to realise what an asset I had at my hands.
I'm coming.
I never thought of that noise live. So yeah, it was cool. It was fun. It was immediate. The day's work was done, and it opens up the way you see it. And actually, there's more of a calling for this stuff because, as we know, the publishing industry is not what it once was in terms of budgets and the volume of commissions. So digital and video starts to come to the fore, and it's quite exciting. And thanks to these people having the vision to see my stuff working in that environment, again, I was blessed with great art directors and editors, and all of a sudden you go, wow, okay, that's cool, they've done that, maybe I could take that now and go to the RFL, the RFU, boxing, whoever. You just, you use your head and you run with it. And then again, as time goes on, new markets open up. One thing that I found about my lettering in particular was that there was a certain safety to the fact that somebody could brief you with it, and within that style set they would know where it was going to end up. So I'd worked for 7 years full-time as a freelance illustrator, and I'd never picked up a single book jacket commission. But then Bloomsbury got in touch, and Penguin won the case, and all of a sudden you've got this lettering brand, and it's something quite attractive for book jackets because A, you're working with narrative, B, there's a lot riding on a book jacket. It's quite an important device to sell that book, so there are a lot of people who have a say in that creative direction. So what you find is where it's very easy to sit there and think, yeah, that book's got an amazing story, we can do an all singing, all dancing illustration. There's a lot of risk involved, and I think people are quite cold on taking that gamble because there are a lot of variables of illustrators. What if somebody has a bad day? What if what they've got in that portfolio is not everything you're going to see? So in my experience with this stuff, I've found a little bit more caution, but with the lettering, it's kind of nice because it's got a certain flexibility about it, and clients can understand it, they can sell it to the author, and they can kind of just put that on the table. And I found that was a little, it opened the door for me to publishing. Collaboration's a big thing. I've found that ever since I started doing the lettering, again with the speed factor, because my stuff's quite quick now that I've got control over it, I've started to think about what industries I want to work in. So music is a big passion, and I've done a lot of work in music over the years. And a friend of mine, Lorna, who's a drummer for this hard rock band that I work with, she got endorsed by Natal Drums and Zildjian Cymbals and Veta Drumsticks, which was exciting stuff. So all of a sudden she got these contacts into that industry. So as a favour for a friend, I said, look, let's do some cool posters to kind of, mark the occasion. But as a nice side effect, all of a sudden you can go to the people in that company and go, look, I've done this for one of your represented artists, let's talk about your marketing campaign or whatever else it is. So I think it's just good to take this stuff to the network, and if you can do it fast, then that's an asset. Go and seek the variation. Technology is something that's come into the fore recently. I was lucky enough to interview Andy Sandoz for the podcast, who was the creative director at Havas Worldwide and was the president of DNAD for a year. Very forward-thinking guy, and he's a huge advocate of technology. And during the interview, his comment, "Technology is not going to shoot you," really stood out, and it really made me think, because I, for one, have always, well, just seen it live in action, but I've always been quite reluctant to jump into new technologies. But this guy was really kind of experimental, and he said, "Well, what have you got to lose? Like, go out there and experiment with scientists, work with singers, whatever it is, like, just be playful and explore, because the greatest ideas come from that stuff." So off the back of that conversation, I'd been sharing a studio at a big site with about 400 people, and the lady opposite was doing product design at university, and she had this whole setup of 3D printers in her studio. And I just got the idea in my head that that would make a really cool platform to paint onto. So I ended up commissioning her out of my own back pocket to kind of print my head wearing headphones, and then paint directly onto a set that I created from this stuff for the podcast, because this wasn't about me anymore, this was about the guests that I was interviewing. Therefore, it was a great excuse to kind of go, right, okay, I don't have to just draw anymore, I don't have to just do the lettering, I can really mix this up with multimedia. So I set this whole thing up and shot it myself using a basic camera, and it's had some of the best feedback that I've had from creative directors. They've been really quite, excited about where this is going, working with this almost sculpture and taking things forward. So I just think with any discipline, I mean, lettering, of course, I'm using as the example, but you really can push things forward by having conversations with people from way outside of graphic design and illustration. It just gives it an extra pop and a whole different relevance. So, as Willa mentioned, I brought a book out a couple of years ago, which was an online rant of a frustrated freelancer, which kind of snowballed into this manuscript and became a very honest account of trying to make a living from your, creative passion. So, I got a deal with a very small publisher, and they had zero inclination to market the thing, next to nothing budget. So I was left in a position where it was all on my shoulders, and I've got a moderate following on a few social platforms, but I'm way in the dirt when it comes to some people. And I had to really think about how I could push this stuff out there in great volume. So the lettering jumped out as kind of the primary channel as to how I should market this thing. So as you can see on the book jacket, it was full illustration, but I also gave quite a strong area to the lettering. And off the back of that, I came up with this whole campaign by pulling these weird moments from the book, which I felt got the kind of the sensibility over with the audience, and created these t-shirts with very obscure kind of, like, you've got Lecky Bill, you've got Lunchtime Pint, Next Door's Cat was another one, and they were all one of a kind, and I paired up with a t-shirt printer, we did a bit of a sponsorship swap deal, and got this stuff out there. And it's, as somebody who doesn't have the slightest clue about implementing good typography or graphic design, this was a great excuse to run a full marketing campaign with next to no budget. I think the only money I spent on it was on the Facebook sponsored advertisements, and it really worked. It really got a great traction for the book, and I worked with a photographer friend who did the shoot for free, so I used the same trick that I've done on the WWE stuff and created the banners. And there's just something about the words and the immediacy of getting the message across and saying something that nobody has to think about. I liked the fact that it had energy, and I thought that people would be interested in the t-shirts, even if, in all likelihood, let's face it, they didn't have a clue what I was on about with these messages. But it worked, and it did well, and it was just a great way for me to overcome my shortcomings. More recently, I'm working on a big exhibition with a music photographer that I saw his work in a pub, and luckily I was with a friend at the time who used to commission him for the big issue. So he put me in touch, and we're on the brink of completing a huge kind of body of work, 50 people in the music industry who he's photographed over the years, and we're going to do a big show. And the nice thing about the volume of work is that you are forced to vary things up, and I've been guilty of leaning on my painted lettering a little bit too much, and one of the things my agency flagged up was that it would be nice to see a little bit more of an expansive range. So I felt Kanye West was a great example to start playing with the more abstract use of it, so just using the speech marks and the fact that he's a real Marmite, love-hate character. And it was nice to use a more abstract expression, but it still had the same sensibility as the lettering. A couple more from the project there. You've got FKA Twigs and Ian Brown. And the nice thing about musicians is you've got these real strong, kind of unignorable characters who've got a real personality. So you have to be sympathetic to that. You have to try and capture it. And the idea is that I could put this stuff in front of these people and they wouldn't want to slap me in the face. Because of the way that I've represented them, you know. The hope is that they will be kind of like, okay, I see where you're going. Yeah, I get that. You've chosen a lyric that was personal. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I failed completely. But the challenge of using all this colour across 50 images and different compositions, different fonts, different flow, the way you broke up the lettering, you know, it's all really crucial. And not just that, but the fact I was working with a photographer's work. This is his life's work. We're talking about 25 years of shooting musicians. So the debates we had and creating a balance so that we were both happy with it was really important. You know, it's no different to working with a good creative director. So it's all about the essence and the souls across a big volume of work. One of the more recent things again, worked with Doc Martens on a collaboration recently and created an original shoe, essentially. So one of a kind. So they sent me a pair of oxblood boots and basically said, do your thing, no brief. Do it, keep it, we'll do an interview with you about the project, and that's it. But the parameters and the restrictions on working on a new surface, on leather, on a really weird shape, and something so iconic to so many people was a real challenge. So I guess I included that because, you know, I wanted to advocate parameters are really healthy, and I think sometimes it's good to challenge yourself and give yourself a really tight brief, especially if you're just finding your feet with this stuff and you don't have the confidence, which I'll be the first person to admit I'm still a long way from feeling confident that I'm any kind of master with this stuff. It's very much just a different facet of what I'm doing. And the presentation, I think, is really important. I think Kate absolutely nailed it with the video from the Hachette stuff. Like, it's just, you couldn't solely work in a better way with the time-lapse stuff. I think it's really important. So I tried to take something close to a strong image and show the work off in its best possible way. Somebody said to me recently, the best money you'll ever invest is a good photographer to kind of get the utmost from your work, and I've never had anything other than really good comeback from spending the money on good photographers. That being said, I didn't spend any money on that. My girlfriend Laura there, she was dragged into the studio to take photos, so it's a bit of a slip up, but the point stands. So this stuff was a personal collaboration with a photographer in New York, and he did these incredible images of ballerinas and bodybuilders, and he had access to this world that I could never dream of being a part of. So I just called him up one day and said, look, I absolutely love this stuff, do you want to collaborate? I've got an idea for this stuff called Angels and Demons, let's just give this stuff to treatment. And it was another important watershed project to make me really think about the functionality of this stuff. So, you know, this was a finished photograph, and I actually got a friend who's an art director he put us together in the first place, and he called me up and he said, it's not my place to comment, but you really overkilled that image. Like, it's a finished photograph, you don't need to do so much to it, you need to strip it back. I hope you don't mind me saying that. And I'm always a person who invites criticism, and he was totally right. So it really made me think about letting the image breathe and kind of letting the lettering just do something else. Like I mentioned about the film work earlier, it's so important to consider the function of this stuff and the form. To offset that was a totally different thing for Arsenal, where Arsene Wenger, the manager, he had just hit 1,000 games in charge of the club, and they wanted to do something really stark and simple to celebrate the occasion. So this was an application for mobile phones, where they went through some of his strongest quotes and his match highlights over the years, and they wanted to really lead with the 1,000 and kind of work with that. So it was just the kind of polar opposite to the function of that stuff. I call it stars and extras because it kind of is. It's just, you can't always be the hero of an image, so I think it's important to kind of leave that to the art director or the designer. So I guess in summation, it's an ever-evolving thing. It's something I still feel like I'm not completely learning. I'm way down there on the ladder when it comes to other lettering specialists. But I kind of like that because it gives me a freedom to find my own path and just play with this stuff and see what comes and see what more experienced people can see that I maybe in some way, some years off recognising. There's always a place for it. It doesn't matter how digital things get, how many industries rise and fall. I think there will always be a place for lettering because it just does something completely different to type. It's universal. The example I used for that was Japanese kanji characters for a different film that I worked on as art director. And you've got to have fun with it because it's a very playful medium. And I was chatting to Kate in the pub earlier, and she said to me that it could never be the same thing as typography because it has to be drawn and it has to be imperfect, and that's what makes it so special. So I think it's really important, no matter what stage you're at, to just keep the focus on having fun and being playful with this stuff. So there you go. Thanks for coming down. That's where you can find my stuff.
We've got 2 minutes for Q&A. Have we got any questions from the audience? Come around, Rod. One sec.
Hey, Ben. When you're working with photographs, are you working over the top of the photographs, or are you working on separate bits of paper and you're photoshopping them in, or are you putting acetates over the top of the photographs and then painting over the top and then scanning those photos to combine them? Because obviously, you know, you're going to be doing several versions of this, and I guarantee that, you know, probably fair amount of them aren't going to work the first time. So
9 times out of 10 it's working separately. So I like to work on paper or on card. Kind of glossy stock tends to suit the stuff that I do, and scanned and overlaid. But sometimes it's nice to do it direct. There will be the odd occasion when you get to work on a nice kind of super gloss straight on the top. But obviously that takes.
for instance, the ballerinas, for instance, you would probably, that seems a very immediate piece which would be physical in the piece rather than doing it separately. Was it separate?
It was separate, yeah. It was kind of, it's all very organic, but it's all done in separate layers and scanned in and recomposed a lot of the time. So, you know, oftentimes I'll send over a piece to an art director and we'll go, yeah, on the money, but the ease a little weak, for example. You know, maybe the bottom strip on there looks a little bit wooden. Can we look at that? So, yeah, I kind of had to learn how to go back in and edit that stuff and find the correct flow and how that works together. Sometimes it will come together nailed at first time, other times I can be there for 3/4 of the day trying to get the character right. It really does depend.
Question? I have one for you. So kind of almost similar to that, like obviously all your work is physical stuff that you've done on paper and then you put it into it. Have you looked at or have you considered seeing how you work like directly into like digital work, like Cintiq or an iPad or something like that?
People always say to me, like, in both extremes, my illustrative work and my lettering about Wacom tablets and things like that. And I always say no, just because I'm in love with the accident and the stroke and the fact that I can't always change it with such ease, yeah. And I like finding out different things, and it's funny because it seems that every month there's a new piece of kit that challenges that. You know, like somebody told me recently about one where you can actually work on paper now and it reads it on the screen, and I'm like, I'm running out of excuses with this stuff, slowly but surely. But I'm a bit old school. Like one of the first pieces of advice I ever got was break a few nibs. If you want to really free up your style and find a natural thing, break a few nibs. And I did, and I leave most of my paintbrushes to dry out overnight. It's like a fine artist's nightmare. It's like I'll dip them in ink and leave them purposely to be ruined the next day. It's like, because you get accidental stuff from that you could never plan, and I like to think that's one of the selling points of what I do. I wouldn't ever rule it out. It's like if Wacom came to me and went, there's £5 to draw on a tablet, I'd be all over that. But no, not. I wouldn't rule it out, but I haven't seriously considered it yet.
Do you have any more questions?
So when you're working at such speed, you can, in the best sense, knock this work out pretty quickly. Do you ever feel a need to sit on the work when it's finished before you show it to the client, in case they think, well, this guy is obviously doing, doesn't take very much from the group?
And I do. I'm very aware of that. I don't want to con myself, so I do. I take that into account when I brief the time scale. So I will always give a few days, even if it's an editorial piece and it's just a few words. I'll make sure I'm giving the same respect as when I do a full colour illustration, because otherwise, like you say, oftentimes it's done and I just leave it and I'll sit on that. But it is really important, like you say, I think in any medium it's really important to just step back and not see it for a while. And then, many times I've come back the next day and thought, oh my God, that was nowhere near finished. I'm very mindful of the fact that, it's fast and I can do it, and I do promote that to clients. But there's fast is one thing and then ridiculous is another, so I'm very aware of it, yeah.
We've got time for one or two more.
As far as budget goes, do you find that there's a big difference? Sorry, could you hear the?
Yeah.
As far as budget goes, do you find that there's a big difference in what they'll pay for an illustration project versus a lettering project?
So it depends who I'm working for. Sometimes, yeah. I think I breezed over that bit too quick. I was going to elaborate more, but some clients, yes. It's very much. When I say luxury, I'm not talking like Harvey Nichols or whatever level of luxury. I think it has to be someone who respects the art form. So, you know, if somebody's coming to me and saying, well, we want this opening double-page spread of lettering from the type, most of the people that I work with who've got the budget are prepared to pay the same budget as an illustration. And I think it's only right because it is something that's taken the same level of practice and commitment to really build this stuff. But yeah, invariably you do get the whole thing of can you knock this up in X amount of time, and people, you know, actually having a back and forth argument about why I'm asking that much money. It's like, you know, you get quite angry because it's kind of, there's no way of accurately conveying the time that you have to invest in it to people. So yeah, I do get people trying their hand, but most people and a lot of queries are quite fair about what they're willing to pay, and a lot of it does still come down to the licensing and the territory and, you know, the time you want to use it for. All the key things that you would price any kind of creative project on are still at play with this stuff. So fortunately, most of it's cool, but you do get the odd knobhead.
Knobhead is probably a good point to leave it.
Can I ask a question? Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm interested in your banners, specifically, I guess, with the WWF ones that you sent over to the US. When you're doing, do you do roughs to then agree before you do them on large scale? Or, I mean, because your work feels so immediate, is it almost better just to go straight in with the final thing, and if they hate it, then just redo it?
Yeah, the latter, definitely, yeah. It was, I mean, in that case, I was such a super fan that it was kind of, I knew all the catchphrases, I knew all the characters, I knew who had a mask, I knew who came down in hot pants. You know what I mean? It was like, I knew everything. So it was like, it was very easy, but all the same, I very much sent over like a character profile written to the art director and said, this is what I've got in mind, what do you think? But as you said, the immediacy of it, and in that job, for example, he really wanted me to push the energy in that stuff and really not think too much. So he said, look, just get stuck in. We'll speak in a day's time, send me what you've got, we'll take it from there. And it really wasn't that much of a ball ache if I had to redo anything. And that's the case for a lot of it, really. I mean, especially with the lettering, there's only so much sketching you can do because the sketch is going to look very different to the style of the paintbrush. So with this stuff, it often is just a case of get us a first draft down and we'll take it from there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Dad.
Also, thanks for being quite honest, because I think, you know, conversations about art directors rejecting work is never an easy thing to talk about. So thank you. Okay.
Yeah. So that's us tonight. We're going to head to the pub in just a minute. We're just going to get the map up. It's going to spin round. So there'll be a map. Like I said before, head out the door, turn right again. It's going to be like a minute's walk. It's called the Owl and Pussycat. It's on the right hand side. We're going to head upstairs. So Ben and Kate are both going to be there. So buy them a drink, ask them some questions. Before we go, I've got to say thank you again to us two for putting this up. Nancy, of course, for putting her time in. Thank you, Nancy. And the free agent for sponsoring us, for giving us something to drink, some food.
Okay, I'm struggling with this. Okay, so after this, we're going to go to the pub. Have we said this?
Yep.
Rob and I are going to hang back and kind of tidy some things away, but we would appreciate it if you do make your way to the pub, because the quicker we can kind of set up here, and the quicker that Nancy can get home tonight. Yeah.
Say something else. No? Alright, we'll leave that. We'll leave that. I think that's us. Thank you all for coming. It's so great to have you all here. Thank you.